I realize that I've not been entirely honest with you. I talk a lot about money, I talk a lot about abundance and becoming free from scarcity. And I joke a lot, I play with it. And in some ways, it's because I want to lighten the mood. I want to make it softer, more approachable. And yet, like, what I've denied you all is the reality of how close to my soul this work is. I learned in my process of working on my money shadow that I had thought my parents filed for bankruptcy when I was like 10, and so I was like, that made sense why I felt so triggered by money. I found out in that process that it actually happened when I was 1. And I'm a November Scorpio, and basically before my, second Christmas, my parents lost a house and filed for bankruptcy. And so knowing what I know about psychology and developmental stuff with kids, like, I was like, shit. I essentially was immersed in scarcity. And that would make sense. Like, if I had been a parent and I lost a house and filed for bankruptcy, like, holy shit, there have been so many decisions I would have made. There would have been an energy that I would have been radiating, and not any fault. Like, I don't blame my parents at all. Like, that's not a thing I feel. It just confirmed, like, holy shit. This is why money work is so, like, deep for me. It's like the core energy of safety and security and acceptance and stability. And I sat this morning, went out for breakfast, and just allowed myself to feel, and it was kind of flowing already, and it's still flowing, like, this is why I love working with people on their money shadow, because I truly see it and feel it to be the most potent image, the most potent symbol of worth, value, security, love, acceptance. Not that money itself is that, but the energy of money, the emotions of money, the beliefs I have about money, none of which have anything to do with dollars or coins or accounts, but has everything to do with how my nervous system coded and practiced money for a few decades. This work for me, particularly this last year, has, like, changed my life. It has changed the trajectory of my kids' lives. When I started this journey, I was charging $75 an hour. And that was okay as long as I was married to a partner who had a full-time job. My expenses were pretty low. The kids were young and kind of at an age where they had broken out of the expensiveness of, like, baby, toddler, and before the expenses of, like, grade school, middle school, high school. I got to the point where, okay, well, I'm starting my life over. I'm moving out. I'm going to be establishing my life separate from this partner I've had. And at that point, I didn't have the privilege anymore of doing this work at playing it small, keeping my costs low, and creating, an easy access situation for clients, directees. I got started in spiritual direction, and in that world, if you're familiar with spiritual direction in the Christian world, seasoned spiritual directors maybe charge $120, $140 an hour. So when I was starting out, like, there was truly no way to even fathom that I could charge that. I started out at like 40, I want to say it was $40 an hour, because like people who have been doing it for 30 years were charging 120, 140. I can't start anywhere close to that, right? That was the belief. Started out at 40, then I bumped it to 50, and that felt big. And then I remember when I moved to 75, like, holy shit, like my, now my floor, the floor I was standing on, like, it used to be a ceiling. Like, I didn't think I could ever get there, and now I'm standing on that. And I did $75 an hour until literally the end of 2024. It's February, it's April. Shit. It's April 2026 right now. So like, you could say maybe about a year and a half ago, give or take, I was still charging $75 per session for people, for clients. And then it just had to shift, because I could not work enough to pay for a life that was going to be outside of being married. Like, by myself, there's no way. I can't have enough clients to pay for my life. Certainly to be generous, to create experiences with my kids. Christmas would wipe me out. A bill, a medical bill, a car situation, like all that would just absolutely destroy me. Not to mention that there was no security of working with someone. Anyone could just stop seeing me at any point. And I couldn't afford to lose clients, which meant that I really couldn't afford to step into my personal transformational essence as a spiritual director, as a coach, as a shadow guide. Like, I kind of had to, at some level, push, but not too hard. You want a goal, but when things get hard, I can't really go all in, because it might actually, you might pull back. That's a real conflict of interest that felt incongruent for me. What I didn't know is that having that kind of model also meant that, like, I was trying to create transformation, but people were meeting with me once a month, maybe once every other week, sometimes weekly. But even then, there was very little continuity. It's like we have a session, powerful session. Well, a week, 2 weeks, a month later, come back and like whatever power, whatever energy was created in that session isn't now here. We're kind of starting over, like, okay, I compare it to, you're baking a cake and it calls for 50 minutes in the oven. And having one-off sessions, even if it's like an understanding that we're going to keep meeting, meant that it's like with a cake, you take it out of the oven every 1 minute, right? 51-minute segments. You're not going to bake the cake, because you're actually letting the heat, the transforming energy out. And essentially, I was like, yeah, I want to help people transform, but this feels like maintenance. This feels like we're talking about the same thing, and it's like 4 steps forward and then like 3.89 steps back. And what is the real progress here? And it was stifling me. Like, I was out of alignment, because I had to actually, this wasn't a conscious thought, but I had to, in some ways, like, not grow too much myself. And life was leading me to move beyond, not leave behind, but expand, include, and transcend, as Richard Rohr says, the Christian mind and narrative. But I couldn't quite do that. I kind of had to live half in on it, half in on the old and half in on the new. thinking of myself as this kind of bridge, but it was stifling. And really it was stifling my clients. They might have been paying for $75 an hour. And honestly, like compared to what I'm charging now, they were kind of getting that. They were getting a $75 an hour situation. In some cases, a $75 a month. I mean, that's half of how much Hulu Live Sports costs. Like, things like cars and houses and education, we pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for. And then we expect to only find a therapist, only find a coach that takes our insurance, that, the lowest cost, a race to the bottom. And I've known so many spiritual directors, coaches, soul guides, retreat facilitators who feel like in order to fill up their business, to fill up their calendar, they have to keep their prices really low and create as much ease and access as possible. But actually, that's the very thing that is keeping you stuck and maybe even keeping you from filling those. In fact, you actually might be filling up your calendar, but then there's no room to create. There's no room to expand beyond. There's no room to continue to learning, there's no room to continue to learn. There's no room to rest, take a vacation. Like, you start to lose the thread, the narrative thread of why you're even doing it. Because you almost, it's, as a mentor of mine once said often, it's like it's the tail wagging the dog. You have to get clients in order to like stay in business. So if you're a soul guide, spiritual director, retreat facilitator, you can't be truly authentic. You can't step into your divine energy and power and transformational purpose if you need clients. Like, this is actually not how the role that we play, right? The role of the shaman is that they are actually taken care of financially and materially speaking, so that they can hold that energy of the community, for the community. And then there is this sense, and I think this is very much connected to the Christian mind, that, well, if it's true service, you shouldn't charge for it. If it's real service, like, money shouldn't be a part of the equation. Here's the thing, like, we don't live in these tribes or communities where like there is abundance of people just providing the things you need. The way we get the things we need in this life, particularly, let's just say like the United States, in the West, but like this is a global thing. Money is required. There has to be an exchange, and money has to be a part of it, because if not, like it's pretending to live in a system that we actually don't live in. I don't like capitalism either. I don't like it. I don't like capitalism. And like, I don't know anything different other than like conceptually. And so therefore, like, I have to work within it. I have to work within it. And the people who do like capitalism are people who aren't necessarily doing great things, by and large, historically. And there is this kind of moral high ground or martyr complex. It's like, well, I'm not going to buy into the system. And by trying to not buy into the system, it's like, well, I'm disrupting it, or I'm going to circumvent it and offer this for free. But here's the thing, money is a collective symbol. When you offer your services, your service, your gifts for free, you are communicating a lack of value. And when you communicate a lack of value, people who come to you are attracted to that because there is a lack of value in them. They don't see the value. Now, that's not to say people who are paying me $50, $75 an hour, didn't value themselves. But to the extent that we are valuable, like those same people have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on houses, cars, education, relationships with other people. By and large, though, they are people who don't know how to spend money on themselves. They don't know how to invest in themselves without it being some kind of approved collective goal, like getting a degree, a house, having a car. It's something that's like outside of them. But when there is something that is like, I need this because I need to transform, or I need this because like I value myself and I deserve to become the best version of myself. I deserve to be able to rest and be taken care of. By and large, the people that I would meet with were givers. They gave or they just disowned any kind of need, any kind of self-investment that would not have an external goal or external stimulus, I guess. My passion for this work is to raise the wealth consciousness. And what I mean by that is what is unconscious is the ability to value yourself. And I want to raise that into your conscious awareness, into who you know that you are. The shadow is the you that you don't know. Your shadow is who you don't know you are. In fact, the word, when I think of the universe, I hear the un-I verse. It's the me, the I, that's not me, that I have not yet spoken, that I have not yet sung. It's the un-I verse. The universe out here is the you that you have not encountered. And so when you see people valuing themselves, charging more, in fact, you may not even know anyone that's doing that except for me. And that's on purpose. Your shadow, your unconscious mind is really, really good at deleting things that do not align with how it sees itself. Okay? So that's why this money shadow work is so important, because what you believe about the world, about your potential, about your ability to create income and generate a lot more money, doing more of the work that you really want to be doing, that doesn't even register as possible. It's a core limiting belief. And what my deepest passion is in this work is to identify, address, and blow out these core limiting beliefs so that you can start to actually imagine what it would be like to make significantly more while actually helping people step into their power. When I was charging $75, $100 an hour, I was in some ways just collecting money. And they were collecting a slightly new perspective, really cool ideas, great metaphors. It might help them think about a relationship differently, or help them imagine where they could do better, or where they might need to take ownership of something that they've been projecting. But when I started charging thousands of dollars for a container, that cake was going into the oven for 50 minutes without the heat escaping. They were being transformed. People would oftentimes, I've had clients who step into my container and their relationships fall apart. And it was a relationship that was already falling apart. And because they went all in on themselves, they actually got out of something that was toxic. People step into my container and the job that they hate that keeps them small suddenly feels like they can't tolerate it anymore. I've had clients who are renting and suddenly they can't afford their house, or the landlord comes and says, hey, we're actually needing the house. You've got X number of time to get out, find a new place. And the experience of all of those clients is expansiveness. The way that they had sabotaged their expansiveness, their joy, their potential, the ways they were keeping themselves small, when they went all in, they expanded their life. And it always looks like a deconstruction, a diminishment before there is an expansion, because the diminishment is just lining you up with what already was. When I was charging $75 to $100 an hour, I was in some ways agreeing with them. Yeah, like, I guess figure out a better way to stay small. Let's find a more creative, more loving way to like maintain the status quo. When people go all in because money is a symbol of worth and value, when people pay you thousands of dollars where they used to might pay you a couple $100, they communicate to their own soul that who they really are, what they really want. And they're unable to maintain the old facade of keeping things safe. That's not for everyone at every point. But if that's you, if you're at this place of like, I can't keep doing this, I cannot keep playing small like this, you've got to actually take an action that's in alignment with that. You've got to get a coach. You've got to step into a container. You've got to get into the oven and have accountability that holds you in there until you come out fully yourself. I can say that because I've done that. I have had the coach. I have immersed myself into a way of seeing the world that truly has changed my life. And I didn't have the privilege of not doing that. If you have the privilege of not doing that, then that's where you're at. But if you're like, I can't keep doing this, I refuse to keep doing this, then make a decision. As my family in the South would say, piss or get off the pot. Life, it's like you got this one precious life. If you believe in reincarnation, great. But you always have one life that you're aware of, like fully. You're here right now. You're conscious right now. Step into it. Step all the way in to this potential, to what you're capable of. And borrow belief. Borrow belief. Allow yourself to step into the unknown, the I verse, and see that there are words, there are songs, there are stanzas in your life that are ready for you to step into. All you got to do is step across that threshold that no longer allows you to maintain that old identity. I'd love to see you at my Money Shadow Mastermind. This is a massive deal. It's $1,111 for 6 weeks of intensive work around your money shadow, around your emotions and core limiting beliefs around money, and a practical guide on how to create and require what you truly are worth. It doesn't have to be what I charge. What I charge is nowhere near what some coaches charge. And it is so far above, quote unquote, what others charge. It has to align with where you're at. There are iterations. I'm not done. I will eventually charge more. Right now I charge a lot compared to what I used to. But there will be a day where this will be so little. But it's about alignment. It's about stepping into that edge of becoming, not just the, what you can do. I could charge $75 an hour and rake in probably a couple $1,000s this week if I wanted to. And I do not want to live like that. So go all in on yourself. Step all the way in, because it is entirely possible for you. And I'm passionate about this work, and I will hold you accountable to the goals that you set. Let's go.